Quebec, Canada, fighting Troy the Destroyer Dorsey, 12 rounds for the World Super Lightweight Championship.
What are you going to do now as far as kickboxing?
First, I want to thank God, say hello to my wife, Shelly and Kendra. Happy birthday, Shane, and thank all of my instructors and students at my school. Now, pick up kickboxing and boxing both again and go after a world title.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. All right. The winner and still Hurricane World Super Lightweight Champion of the World, Troy the Destroyer Dorsey!
Hello, Destroyers. Welcome to If the Gloves Could Talk with Troy Dorsey. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, Covert. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I didn't
You're very
realize
welcome.
you had a podcast thing.
Yes, sir. Well, now you're going to have to let all your friends know about this podcast. Troy Dorsey,
I
If the
know
Gloves
it.
Could Talk.
That's right. You're going to have to send me the link and I'll put it on my Facebook page.
Okay. So, what drew you first to martial arts?
Well, I was a loaf on the swim team. One night during practice, the coach took me to the side and said, "Why are you such a loaf?" I said, "I don't like swimming." He says, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to do karate." So he made me get dressed. I went from the indoor pool at A&M back in '71 to G. Raleigh White Basketball Coliseum with all the training rooms behind it. He walked me up to Dr. Jordan's class on the second floor and pushed me inside. And Dr. Jordan said, "What do you got there, Coach Manning?" And he said, "I got a loaf on the swim team. Says he wants to do karate." And Dr. Jordan kind of laughed and said, "Well, if he loafs in here, he's going to get beat up." And so I did karate class that night. And actually, Steve Powell had just made brown belt, and he's the guy that taught me all my basics. So
Steve
that was the
Powell.
beginning of my karate in mid or late May of 1971.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, Steve Powell was a great martial artist himself.
Oh, yeah.
So, you train under some legendary martial artists in the world. Can you give me
Oh,
some
I
names?
did.
Steve Powell and who
I was
else?
very fortunate. Now, what's that?
Can you tell me who you've trained under?
Yes, sir. I was with Dr. Jordan for about 6 or 8 months, and then some college guys complained that a teenager was working out. So, and I did. My parents didn't work at A&M, so I had to go. I had to quit karate at the under Jordan, and I went under a Vietnam vet named Joe LaPaglia, who he was pretty crazy in how his training and stuff. And then he shut his school down, and Dr. Jordan had opened a school up in town. So I went back to Dr. Jordan. I got a list here, so I got them all. Dr. Jordan left A&M, graduated. Steve Powell took over, and I made it up to second level brown belt under Steve. Joined the Marine Corps. While I was in communication school, I used to go down to Chula Vista, from San Diego to Chula Vista, and do karate at a Chuck Norris studio. And they enjoyed beating up the Texan. And then I went to Okinawa. I was at Camp Hansen and trained under Kichiro Shimabuku, who's the son of Tatsuo Shimabuku, the originator of the system. Actually, I got to see the Grand Master Tatsuo do a staff form at a real small tournament when I first got there. They moved me bases down to the south end of the island. I trained Tang Sudo under a guy named Amundsen, who was in the top five fighters in California before he got moved to Okinawa. I also trained a couple of days a week with a black belt in Kobayashi Shorin Ryu, and did a little bit of amateur boxing with a guy in Okinawa. He enjoyed beating up on me. Got sent back to 29 Palms, California, and trained under a guy named Grant and in Okinawan Kenpo. And then he got moved. He went to a new base, and a gentleman named Brumbelow, who was a black belt of Guan Pu Gil, took over. In my last year and a half, I did Taekwondo with him, and finally made black belt under Juan Pugil. He's a world famous guy back in the 70s, 80s. Even had
Ah,
movies. So I've had
yeah.
a lot of different instructors.
Yes, sir. Well, that's nice. That's nice. Um, how'd you get in the? First of all, I want to thank you for serving in our military because we could not live like we live and do what we do if it wasn't for men and women like you serving our country. Thank you so much for serving in the
Well,
in
I
the
had a
Marines.
thank you, and I did the Marines to make my dad happy, and I went in unguaranteed, figuring I'd end up being a infantry, a grunt. They call them a grunt in the Marines, and instead they stuck me in worldwide communications. So I was always in Okinawa. I spent 6 months at a point station in Camp Hansen, and then 6 months, 3 or 4 floors underground for a World Communications Center. It was kind of it's kind of a skate MOS. We don't run too much. We don't clean rifles,
Ah,
but I had a good time. I had a
yeah.
good time. Made it up to corporal and got out and came back and started doing karate in Texas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So you trained in not Shorin-ryu, Ishin-ryu, in Kempo and Taekwondo, American Karate, and probably some other systems. What's the core principles you think that that connect all of them, or that you received from those?
Well, mainly the basics, because each system has ideas that the originator has kept alive in his system. So Ishin has basically the same kicks and punches we do, but they focus so much on self defense, street fight self defense, and so they're a mean self defense system, and so they really don't get into competition. The kicks and punches are the same, but they get into street application. Matter of fact, their grandmaster Tatsuo started it, and because he thought it was becoming martial arts were becoming too sport oriented. Now Shorin Ryu, that was there probably people get mad at me. That was kind of like Shotokan, and once again, the attitude in class reflected by the guy that started it, and that was kind of a mix of self defense and tournament competition. Um, Okinawan Kenpo, once again, was a self defense system. The Kenpo, Okinawan Kenpo, Shorei Ryu, um, Ishinru, those are kind of self defense systems. They might compete, but their emphasis is self defense.
Right.
Whereas Taekwondo and Shotokan, um, they tend to they started to lean towards competition more as the years went by, because they saw it as a way to safely test what they were learning in class.
Right.
Because you can't fight each other street fight rules where you stomp knees and gouge eyes.
Right.
You'll hurt each other too much.
Oh
But
yeah.
there was always, with the Okinawans, there was always a great respect for other martial arts. They didn't look down. Shimabuku didn't teach us to think that Ishinryu was the first and last martial art. Um, Okinawan Kenpo actually has a whole lot of weapons in it. So did Ishinryu. Shorin-ryu, all the Okinawan styles do, because the Japanese took away their weapons, so they took farm tools and turned them into weapons.
Right.
That's one of the things that people seem to have forgotten over the years. I do nunchaku. Nunchaku is a flail to crack grain. If you were a farmer that had a grinding stone, then you had a tonfa, which is a handle for a grinding stone.
Right.
So a lot of that old stuff has gotten lost over the years. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know the weapon that they're doing. They don't know what it really is meant for, which is
Right.
a farm tool.
Yeah, they got their weapons taken away. They had to use those farm tools as their weapons. Correct.
Oh yeah, yeah. They
Yeah.
weren't allowed to have swords and arrows. Um, the only ones that could kind of have a spear was fishermen for their fish. You know, um, And the whole reason we have iron horse forms, that go in a straight line back and forth, is because the Japanese even said you can't practice martial arts. So they'd go out to the rice paddies in the night, and practice on the rice paddies. And all they have is little trails, 2 foot wide trails in between all the rice ponds. And so they'd get out there and practice their martial arts. And so that's where the iron horse katas came from, for sure.
Yeah.
Not the I know Koreans do iron horse forms, but all the Korean forms really, Mudakwan, Chundakwan, Odakwan, all those systems in Taekwondo, the 8 schools, all their forms really do come from the Okinawan Shorin-ryu system. And if you were to watch all the basic forms for Shotokan or Shorin-ryu or Shori, well, maybe not Shori-ryu, but Shorin-ryu, you'd go, whoa, those kind of look like Chunji, Tangun, and Tosan,
Yeah.
all mixed up together. And that's true. Now, Shorei-ryu and Goju-ryu, they had their own form system, and the Koreans didn't copy it because, especially Goju-ryu, is kind of a hard, soft system. So all of a sudden, they'll do techniques that look like kung fu. And Ishin-ryu, they're the originators of a small stance. Their front stance is almost, barely a shoulder width long. So because they wanted their feet under them in a street situation, so they could respond and move sideways and backwards and stay away from the opponent. It was really, as I got when I was teaching in Texas, when I first got out of the Marines, I suddenly realized that, wow, these Okinawan systems, they're really built for self defense.
Yeah.
Okay, because of the Japanese domination. And so I learned to adapt a lot of that to the self defense that I taught in the school in Huntsville, Texas. We kick and punch like Taekwondo boys and do self defense like Ishin Ryu.
Yeah.
So,
They take the best
adapt.
of both worlds, I guess, right?
Exactly right. Bruce Lee wasn't. Bruce Lee might have been the first guy that was famous that said that, but in America, karate instructors all across America were doing that. That's why America had such an evolutionary uplift to martial arts, because when you're in, I mean, there's 5 schools of Shorin Ryu. Okay, there's 8 schools of Taekwondo. They all kind of want to honor their grandmaster. Well, in America, they say, well, if that ain't working, let's find something that does. And that's where martial arts, not only in self defense, but especially in sport, just radically changed in America. I mean, it was because of the Americans
Right.
and our idea of let's make it better. America's always had the attitude, let's make it better. That's the way it works.
They Americanized it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, what's your personal training philosophy today compared to where it first was when you first began?
Well, no matter what anybody says about keeping students, you have to develop your basics. And you're not going to develop basics by doing 5 or 10 techniques with one side of your body, or maybe if you do 10 kicks with each leg and 10 punches with each arm. You have to overload basics. You have to overload basics so they're correct. You have correct technique. Correct technique develops power. And then maybe if your body metabolism is right, you can become very, very fast. But you have to overload basics. You have to, I mean, literally, I used to do hundreds of kicks with each leg on the heavy bag. I used to
Yeah.
do over 1,000 kicks 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday,
Right.
overloading basics. And I treated my students that way. I had in Huntsville, Texas, I had my children so well trained that they came in several times and I'd say, "All right, kids, I got a great surprise for you today." And they'd say, What, Mr. Blackledge? I said, we're going to do 1,000 kicks. All right. And they were all gung ho for it.
Yeah.
And um, in kata, you have to do it over and over and over. I used to do my forms for competition 10 times a day, and you should really kind of do it that way for your belt test, because it's like I used to tell students, especially the teenagers and the little kids, can you behave perfectly? They'd say, well, no. I said, you get in trouble from time to time. You disobey your parents. They tell you to take out the garbage and you don't do it. Or the teacher tells you to hush and you keep talking, right? And they go, yeah. I said, but you can have perfect technique. So search for that perfection in your kicks and punches through
Yeah,
repetition.
you're always striving for
What?
that, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, um, now I'm 69 and I've got steel hips and one steel knee and another one's on the way. So now I swim and I put short flippers on and I hold on to the wall, and I do a minute and a half to 2 minutes per leg, and I do front kicks, then I do round kicks, then I do inside outside crescents, and then I do back kicks, and then I do some of the drills that they had taught me for hips, to repair your hips. So I'm still kind of doing karate. I'm doing the basic kicks in a pool every day,
Yeah.
but and from time to time I'll get out in the backyard and I'll do kwanku, which is actually a Japanese form, and I'll do one of the tekis, one of the iron horse forms, because my days of kicking above my belly button they're kind of over now.
Yeah. Yeah, join the club.
My days of kicking people in the head without flinching or making a weird noise after I do it. Yeah. So I still play with my staff in the backyard, and I still play with the nunchaka in the backyard. But even that is tough on me because I was one of those nuts that always worked on the makiwara,
Oh
a
yeah.
post with a rope, and I have extreme osteoarthritis. Yeah, but one thing, there was a guy down in South Texas, got a big school. Um, he used to throw a tournament, and you and I know him real well. You probably fought him in tournaments, and he said, "Well, I don't punch the makiwara, and I don't break boards." He says, "I don't want to hurt my hands." Well, I never saw that guy knock anybody out.
Yeah.
And when you get to where you can throw a full power punch or kick on a wooden post wrapped in rope, when you want to knock a guy out with a ridge hand or a round kick, you do it. And from time to time, when people would hit me too hard, you know the old unwritten rule. You hit me too hard once, and it's like, okay, that's a mistake. You do it a second time, that means you're doing it on purpose. And then you knock the guy out and get disqualified, and you tell the guy, hey, next time we fight, you try to knock me out, I'm going to do it to you. That
Yeah.
was an unwritten Texas rule in tournaments. You know that.
Unwritten
You
Texas
know, very
rule.
few will admit it. Very few will admit it. They're acting like the boxing commission is looking over our shoulder still.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we know you competed a lot in martial arts, doing kata and sparring. So was there a single win that meant the most to you? And if I'm sure there was.
Well, there
I
was
guess what was the
there,
biggest what was the biggest tournament that you won maybe, and tell me what your.
well, I had 3 or 4 big wins. Um, the first one, okay, in 1974, I made black belt. I went to my first tournament as a black belt in Los Angeles, Sho Kasugi's tournament, which at the time was drawn like 1,500 people because he
Yeah.
was making those ninja movies. I don't know if you remember that, but he made a series of ninja movies, and his sons were young then, and they kind of got started in those movies, and they're acting.
I'm trying to turn the volume up because I can't hardly hear you.
Oh, okay. And so I went to Shokasugi's tournament. I didn't do forms. I had a, bald head from the Marine Corps, wearing a white uniform and a brand new black belt sticking out like, whiskers on a cat.
Yeah.
And there was like 30 something people in heavyweight black belt
Yeah.
because I fought 4 times. And so the very first guy I fought, was a black guy that was way taller than me. I was like 6'1.5" at that time, and I fought a guy that was 6'4" or 6'5", long arms, red uniform, shooting his mouth off, and all of his buddies saying he's on his way to being the #1 heavyweight in the nation, and da 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 da, and they were calling him Nasty. I didn't hear his last name, but I just heard him calling him Nasty, and so. We bowed in. I instead of being in a side horse stance, I was in. My feet were close together, almost like a ready stance. So he's dancing around, and I'm just kind of pivoting and keeping my right leg in front. And he charged in, and I right side kicked him and nailed him. Boom, 1 point. And it was the first 1-3, or excuse me, it was a 3-point spread, or the first one. Well, 3-point spread. And so. He's like, oh, that's luck. And he's talking bull and saying, you got lucky jarhead and all this kind of stuff. He talked a lot. We all knew of a guy named Nasty that talked a lot and red uniforms. And so he's moving around, and he charged in again, and wham, I side kicked him because, I knew this guy, his legs were as long as my arm. I mean, his arms were as long as my legs, And so judges all called it. The crowd was going crazy. His buddies were like, no. Come on, Nasty, get him, Nasty. And so he charged in again, and he kind of got the jump on me. And so I grabbed his front arm and leaned back and did a defensive heel kick in the head and hit him kind of hard. I was surprised I didn't drop him and put my leg down, 3-0, bowed out. The fight was over. And I kind of found out, a couple of years later when Nasty Anderson came to Texas, I was like, I recognize that guy.
Yeah.
He was my first fight at Shokasugi's tournament.
Oh,
So
wow.
I won my next 2 fights. And then I fought a guy who was a middleweight, and because you can fight up, and I fought a guy that was like #1 or 2. I don't remember his name. #1 or 2 in California, and he was so fast. He made me look like the slow heavyweight I was. He beat me like 3-1, but I beat Nasty Anderson my first fight as a black belt at Shokasugi's tournament, and that's the truth, man. I mean, I didn't even know he was Nasty Anderson. I was just a very green jarhead with just made black belt. You know what I mean? My eyes were wide open, like whoa. But that was a lot of fun. Now I came back to Texas. Another fight that I really enjoyed winning is I fought Arnold White 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, and he always beat me. And he'd hit me real hard. And so at the end of 83, I was fighting him at Ishmael Robles' tournament. And I guess it was for first and second. I really don't remember because they also had Grand Champ. Anyway, so about midway through the fight, he hit, and I was leading though. I was beating him because I'd done a seminar with Ray McCallum. And Ray McCallum had just said just enough things to me to make me realize how I needed to fight. And so sure enough, about midway through the fight, he hits me with that inverted punch of his, and he busted my ribs on my right side.
Yeah.
And so I stood up. Judges pulled us apart. I stood up, my hands on my hip, looking like, man, what do you call him? And they gave him the point. And the center ref says, okay, fighting stance. And I went, time out. And I turned around and laid on the ground. Steve runs over. Hey, man, he just knocked the wind out of you. I said, am I breathing hard? I'm not breathing hard. My ribs are killing me. I think he cracked or broke my ribs. I don't know, but he did something to my floater over here. And so Karl Marx, the old guy from Weishe Rue, World War II veteran martial artist, he comes over. He was one of the corner judges. He comes over and says, you don't have broken bones. You just got the key knocked out of you. And he knelt down and he did just like Karate Kid. He slapped his hand. No, he put his hands on his knees, deep breathed 3 times, slapped his hands, put them on my ribs, and ki-eyed. And my students said that it looked like there were wires that jerked me to my feet. They said I didn't even pull my feet under me and then, use one hand to stand up. I was on my back. They said it was like something launched me off the floor, and I landed on my feet, and my ribs felt perfect. And they said begin, and I jumped up in the air, and I did something that I shouldn't have done with Zip, but I did a 360 hook kick, and sure enough, I hit him. So I beat him, went home the next morning, felt great that night, went home the next morning, woke up and thought, oh man, my ribs are bruised. But they weren't. 25 years later, I see Karl Marx at a tournament. I introduced myself. He remembered me. I said, you fixed my ribs that night. He says, no, that wasn't me. I used to think it was me. And he pulls out a card. He says, that was the power of Jesus Christ working through me.
Amen.
And he gave me a card, and he was an evangelical motivational speaker now.
Amen.
And I was like, wow, that's cool, because when I saw him, I had, kind of gotten back with Christ in the church. What's another one? Well, when I finally won Grand Champ Cod at Roy Coburn's tournament, the last year he had it in '86,
Pro-Am martial
I
arts.
finally won Grand Champ Cod there, and that was pretty cool. And I
Who'd you
didn't
beat?
do it with weapons; I did it with empty hand.
Who did you beat?
Now, what's that?
Who did you beat?
Oh gosh,
Do you remember?
I think Helen Chung was there because she had taken musical over me doing nunchaku. Uh, I remember her. Who won weapons? Maybe Brian Duffy with his sword, because every once in a while Duffy would beat me with his sword in weapons. Um, and then me an empty hand. And then who won Kung Fu? I don't think it was a national guy. It might have been Robert Hartfield.
Oh yeah.
But it was amazing. And then we tied, me and someone else, probably Helen Chung, tied, and she went out and did the same form, and I came out and said, I'm going to do a different form. Um, and I used, and I completely have forgotten the Japanese name, but whenever I did a second form, I'd use the Japanese words, be prepared. And I right now I cannot think of those Japanese words that mean be prepared. And so I went out and I said, Covert, Blackledge, American Karate, and in Japanese I said be prepared. And I backed up, took a deep breath, and I totally made the form up right then and beat her.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
yeah, that's why it was kind of such a really crazy win.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's see. What made you shift from competing to coaching and teaching full time?
Well, this starts to make me sound. This starts to make me sound bad here, but
Well.
I got bored.
Oh yeah.
I got bored. There was no real money in it. There was still terrible disorganization. Anybody could walk in off the street and say you're a black belt and judge. Um, um, to be real honest, Troy, and I don't say this to brag, my last 3 years of competing, I would do empty hand weapons and specialty. Well, in empty hands, I just went out and made it up each time. And I'd
Yeah.
take, first or second or third to either Steve Powell or Tim Kirby. I mean, I admit I very seldom beat Steve Powell and Tim Kirby. I was in the top 5 in kata, but I never made number 1. In weapons, I stopped trying to do the same form every time. I just started making that up every time I competed.
Yeah.
In specialty, I'd make up a form to a piece of music and do it 4 months, and then I'd pick another song and make up another form for that, and do that for another 4 months. So whereas some people, like Tim Kirby, he only did 1 or 2 forms the whole 7 or 8 years he competed there, from 80 to 86 or something in Texas karate. Steve Powell only did one or two forms. Even in specialty with his musical, he only did these one or two forms that he made up. And I just got bored with it. And
Yeah.
also, I'd moved to Dallas and I was running a school and I started to really have a good time teaching. And so I thought, you know, it's almost as fun when you, I mean, you know this, when you take a student to a tournament and he fights 5 fights and takes first place every time, you know, it's like, hey man, that's my student. Yeah, he just won 5 fights and took first
Yeah.
place. You know that. You've got this. You've got this. It's like your son or your daughter.
Right.
Your children. I don't know about you, but all the children in my karate classes, they were my kids.
Yeah.
And so when they won, I was super proud. And when they lost, I felt real bad for them and would try to console them and stuff. And you know, they're your kids, and so you start to really enjoy teaching to see this progression and this growth and you know, I came back and competed a little bit more in the 90s up in Dallas, but you know, I had a boy named Josh No. He went to DP Hills tournament, won 5 fights, won them all by a 5 point spread.
Wow.
I love that 12-year-old brown belt. Then we took him down to state championships. He won another 5 fights, beat them all by a 5 point spread, except the third fight, the fight for thirds. Otherwise, the fight for first and second, he beat that kid 5-0. And you know that makes you feel good. That's, you know, you're a proud dad. And you
Yeah.
get into teaching, and I had some women that came to me, and they ended up being, you know, first in their division with the AOK in forms. And you just start to suddenly realize this is a lot more fun, and I don't get a broken nose every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
you and I both know Texas karate, they hit a little harder. You get a broken nose from time to time in Texas point karate.
Yes, sir.
Glad to step out of the abuse.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, so I was going to ask you about looking back. How has the tournament scene evolved over the years? Is it better, worse, or just different?
I
know what's the
think
first
in
thing?
the kata, well, I think in the kata divisions, it's it's kind of better because they're doing gymnastics now,
Yeah.
and that's a natural evolution into martial arts. I do believe that every tournament should have two different empty hand kata divisions. One for traditional form. You're not allowed to put a cartwheel in, you know, Chung Mu
Or
or, you
backflip.
know, Kwanku or something, and then have a division where you can do all those gymnastics in it. The same way maybe for weapons, because I see people doing nunchaku and they're doing more gymnastics than, you know, Mary Lou Retton, you know. So maybe they could create more divisions, make more money for the producer by having a traditional empty hand freestyle where you can do gymnastics, traditional weapons freestyle, so you can throw in all kinds of flip flop stuff in your weapons form, and then in specialty. I've always thought, I know a lot of people are like, well, you're not supposed to do karate to music. Karate is an art. It's not just a science. Okay, it's
Right.
not just a method of self-defense. It's an art. Do means a way to a disciplined life. Okay, people say do means an art. No, no, you get a strict translation on do in Japanese or Korean, and it is a method to discipline yourself, mind, and body. And so it's only natural to choreograph martial arts to music. I've always thought that, and so I'm glad they have that division now. I'm glad I was one of the guys that helped start that. Now in sparring, well, heck, man, you can't kick him in the groin, you can't throw him down, you can't sweep his leg to upset his balance. Uh, it's just been too. It's just been made too safe. Too safe. Okay, and that's not like I want to hurt people, but you and I both know, even in Texas in 82 or 3, if you kicked a guy with a front kick and he went down, you probably got a point. If you kicked a guy in the front with the front kick and he flew backwards 10 feet and went down, you got disqualified for excessive contact. If you hit him in the nose and his nose bled for a few seconds, you got a point. If you hit him in his nose and it was smashed out flat and he had two black eyes, you got disqualified. And a lot of the reasons, I know this, and you probably do too. A lot of the reasons we took out the groin kick and took out absolutely no blood, um, and this almost a touch style of karate instead of contact is because of the boxing commission. The boxing commission came in and said, "You guys are getting hurt too much. You're giving away prize money." Well, we call it expense money. Doesn't matter. You're giving away money. You don't have doctors here. You don't keep track of your fighters. So you guys have got to tone down your fighting. And that's what they did. They took out the groin kick. They took out the takedown. Uh, a tournament that I won in '86 with a knockout. I came back in '92, and Lee Stanley hit a guy in the nose with a back fist, 3 drops of blood, and they disqualified Lee. You know, so I'm not too impressed with the new sparring. It's just really a game of tag, and they
Right.
never mix it up. I mean, you and I both know. I saw you one night beat Tim Kirby in San Antonio. You guys bowed in. Judge said go. Kirby skipped up, round kick, started punching. You backed off 2 or 3 times from that, and then I saw a light bulb light up over your head. And every time Tim skipped, you stepped in and body punched him. And I think you beat him by like a 3 or 4 point spread. And it was almost all with that right hand punch, catching him right at the moment that he was in the middle of that skip.
Right.
Well, in a matter of speaking, that was point karate because I've seen you fight other guys and lay into them with a combination that looked like, Joe Frazier in boxing. So
Yeah.
Texas karate had that balance between, sure, we played points, but we also fought hard. And nowadays, all they do is play points. So I'm not
Yeah.
impressed with the fighting. I'm impressed with the forms, but I'm not impressed with the fighting. I hate to say that. I
Well,
really
I'm
do.
wondering if
you
that's
know?
because of people get sued. People are so sue happy that they get
Oh, I
hurt.
know.
So they get
Yeah.
hurt fighting, then they sue the tournament owner or they sue the person they fought. They sue everybody. So maybe
Yeah.
it's the way that's what's happened is there's been so much risk of people getting sued that they just okay, lighten up, don't fight so hard, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure if
Oh,
that's
no,
the case or
you're
not.
exactly right. I mean, um, um, a quick one because I'm a little older than you. I started a little earlier, and also because um, I lived for a month in Ed Parker Senior's garage that was also his karate school. And he had left his house to Ed Parker Jr., his son. So I'm pretty good friends with Ed Parker Jr. And I was looking over photographs of just martial arts history. And I pulled one out of Benny Urquidez, and Ed Parker Jr. says, "Well, you know the story behind Benny." And I said, "What's that?" And he says, "When he was a teenager, 13, 14, and he was fighting, he was hurting kids so much that a group of karate moms came together and petitioned the producers and said, 'We're going to sue you if you continue to let that Benny Urquidez fight because he just hits all of our kids too much.'" Because he was bruising ribs and busting noses. So he stepped out of point karate for 2 years, age 14 and 15. And then when he turned 16, he came back in the men's black belt division and started beating up all the men's black belt division. And then 2 years after that, PKA, WKA got started, and he went immediately into the WKA. But part of the reason he didn't compete for a couple of years as a teenager was because parents threatening lawsuits out in
Yeah.
California. And, you know, I mean, you're in a combat sport. You're going to get hurt, you
Right.
know.
There's a
I
chance
mean,
you can.
yeah, I came over. I used to bring my students over to your school to fight. And I came over one night with a Chinese kid, brown belt, had beautiful karate, named George Wong, and he was your height. He might have been a little skinnier than you because you're an adult and you're built up, have adult build. But we did the class and fought everybody, and then you came over and said, "Hey, Miss Blackledge, why don't you let me fight George here for a few more minutes?" And so you sparred with George, and yeah, you hit him a lot. You hit him a lot. You had a lot of fun banging on old George. And on the way home, George was sitting next to me as I was driving him home, and he was kind of trembling. He's kind of trembling. And I said, "Well, what's it like to fight a world karate champion, world kickboxing champion?" And he had a heavy accent. He had a heavy accent, even though he's born in America. And he goes, "Mr. Dorsey is amazing." And so he started to get out, and the lights were on, and his gi kind of came open. And I said, "Wait a second here, let me look at something." So I pulled his gi open, and he had little red welts on his body. And I said, "Well, George," he goes, "He hit me a lot." I said, "Yeah, but did he hit you too hard?" He goes, "No, sir, nothing's broken." I said, "That's what I mean. He didn't bust you up. He hit you a lot, and he used control when he hit you. So you got some welts on your body. Try not to let your mom see those. Your dad might love it, but I don't think your mom will." They ran a fried chicken place, roasted chicken. And I was always in there eating because their place was in the same strip center as the karate school. And wonderful people, Christian people. And so I knew his mom wouldn't like it. I figured his dad might think it's cool. But you didn't hurt him. You didn't hurt. You hit him a lot. You stung him, but you didn't bust my student up. And when I came over there, I didn't bust your students up. There's this
Exactly.
mutual respect. So um, people don't want to realize that even a 10-year-old brown or black belt can fight really hard and hit hard, but not break things up, you
Right.
know. And they've just said, "No, we can't trust that. There might be an accident. There might be, but there might be an accident when you're doing motocross on your bicycle, and you're going to land in such a way that all that gear doesn't matter because you're going to break your neck because you're landing on your head."
Yeah.
So sometimes our society's too safe.
Right.
It's just too safe, especially dealing with contact sports and sports where you might get hurt because of the nature of the sport.
Yes, sir.
So just part of American society, making it too safe.
And I'm glad
I
it,
mean,
I'm glad you said what you said. I was wondering what you're going to say when I fought
no, I
your
always
students.
trusted you with my students, man, because
Yeah.
I knew, number one, you don't have a mean streak. Number two, well, you kind of have a mean streak, but it's only in the ring, okay? And
I
it's
can
only
turn it
with
up and down.
somebody. It's only with someone who is your level. I mean, I've watched you fight black belts before, and you kind of took it easy on them, and they were new black belts, and you didn't wait. You didn't go, "Oh, this is his first tournament as a black belt, and I'm gonna try out my new jump spin back kick to the jaw." You never did stuff like that. Now I saw you tie up with Tim Kirby and I think Al Garza, a couple other guys that I can't remember their names, but I remember the fight. And yeah, you knocked them down with things. But I knew that overall you do not have a mean bone in your body. You had super control, so I could trust you with my students.
Right.
When Ray Gomez took over your school, he still had that same respect. When I was teaching in daycares, I used to take my students to his school with kids that only did karate 1 day a week, never did forms, never did anything with basics, but basics. And I took them over there and I'd say, "Hey Ray, you know the thing. They do karate 1 day a week. I'm just trying to let them spar. They're orange belts now." And so Ray would put students in with my students, and he'd talk to them first, and they would work with my student. None of my
Right.
students ever got abused at your school when I took them there and you were there. And even my daycare kids when I took them there with the man that you turned it over to, Ray Gomez. And it's real a pity that some schools aren't that way. I'm sure there's some that aren't, but I've always, thank God, uh, Royce Young was the same way. uh, Roy Curbin, these are people who teach control and in respect, and so that was a real good thing. Nowadays the rules are such that nobody's ever going to get hurt.
Yeah, it's contact sport, so yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I tell people: if you go swimming, you're going to get wet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's a good way to say it, comparing martial arts and swimming. Yeah, you're going to get
Yeah,
wet. There's a,
you're
there's a
going to
risk.
get hit
So,
sometimes.
so what
Let's
do you
not
feel
cry
like?
about it.
What's that?
I said, let's not cry about getting hit.
Yeah.
It's part of the game.
What do you feel separates a good instructor from a great one?
Trying to reach each student.
Trying to what?
The only way I can, uh, one of the ways I can explain this is what I used to tell my parents. Uh, you've got 3 horses. You want to train them. One horse, you show it the trick and lead it through the jump with, you know, and the horse does it, and you say, oh, you compliment it verbally and pat it on the head. Another one does it, but you got to give him a piece of carrot to get him to do it. The other
Yeah.
one does it, but he won't do it unless you pop him on the butt with a whip. And, it's like I tell my parents, God makes people that way. Some people do what you tell them. Some people only do it if you reward them. And some people only do it if you give them a little pop on the butt. And it's not my fault God made them that way. It's my job to learn which student has that personality and then bring out the good in them. And if it's the one that needs a pop on the butt, you not only do that at first, but you try to bring them out of that. You try to compliment them to the point to where after so many months, they don't need a pop on the butt. And
Right.
and the ones that have to have a special treat, you don't need to give them a special treat. In other words, a great instructor genuinely tries to learn the personality and the mindset of every student. Well, I've got 30 students in a class. So, so you're not out pushing concrete, digging holes. You telling me that learning the personality of all 30 students and getting to know them a little bit is a tough job? That's an easy job. That's a job that it's like I tell people, what'd you do for a living? Well, I goofed off and taught karate. Well, you didn't work? No, karate wasn't. Teaching karate's not work. It's a privilege that now that I'm a Christian, I realize it's a privilege Christ gave me
Yeah.
because all I always had fun. Now the parents, woo, you and I both
Oh,
know dealing with the parents, but a great instructor gets to know each student. He gets to know them personally. Maybe not personally in the way of the kids making, A's or B's, or he tried to ask a girl out and she told him no, but he tries to get him to actually know him deeper than that so that he can look at the student and tell the student's in a good mood. Okay. And say, well, why do you look so happy? Oh, I made A today on a test. Okay. Because you come to know them to where you can tell just by looking at them if they're in a good mood or bad mood. And
right.
when you get to know that student like that, that helps you draw more out of them. That
Would
helps you make them realize they can do more, you know, just like my crazy students. I went in one day and I said, I lined the students up. I said, guess what? And they go, all of them, what, sir? And I said, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they were all like, what? And some of the advanced students says, we're going to do 1,234 kicks. I said, you're right. They did 1,234 kicks,
one, two, three,
and
four.
yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you want also you got to love them. You got to love them. You got to want to get to know them. You got to
Oh
love
yeah.
them, and that way you can bring the most out in them. And that way you have a child who comes in super uncoordinated. I had a boy that was so uncoordinated. He really couldn't walk and chew gum. Uh, he finally got up to orange belt, And boy, he was a terrible fighter. But he learned how to jump in and throw a 1-2 punch. Before he moved back to Boston, he went to a tournament and won 3 fights, ended up taking third, and he won them all by jumping in with a 1-2 punch. Man, that kid was so proud. His parents were so proud. His father said, "I want to thank you so much. This has really been a confidence booster because he was always afraid to do things." I taught a boy from age 6 to 12. He made black belt, um, and I closed the school in Huntsville and moved away. We had a big school party at the lake as their kids are all out there jumping off this raft thing and stuff. The father and the mother come up to me and they say, "We really want to thank you for doing what you did with Robert." And I said, "That's Robert. Robert's a great kid." They said, "Yeah, but you've really," they said, "Don't you notice the difference?" And I said, "No." They said, "Look at him." And I looked at him and he was a muscle bound little kid from all the kicks, from all the push ups and all the sit ups. He looked like a 20-year-old little bodybuilder almost. And I said, "Yeah, he's in really good shape. He should be. I've worked him out hard." And the father said, and he dropped his head and he said, "Yeah, but look at us." Well, mom and dad were like Pillsbury Doughboys. They were both overweight, and not just the belly, not just the pot belly. They were
Yeah.
overweight, legs, butt, jowls, and I helped. It's like he said, I helped reinforce Robert to become physically better than us. They said, "We know that when he gets old, he might get a stomach, but he's not going to end up like us because we never exercise. You've taught him to enjoy that." I saw Robert in June, okay, and he came to a karate school reunion I had for Huntsville School of Karate down in Houston because he's a black. I had about 6 black belts that lived down there, and all of them that are kids, all of them are still in good shape. And they tell me, "Thank you for teaching me how to work out and stay in good shape."
Yeah.
Now, one's a mom. She's got a little bit of a mommy tummy, and Willard's got a little backup mass, But Robert and Craig and Todd and Pam Hartso, they're they look like they're running 5 miles a day, and they all do have some form of exercise in their life. So a
That's
great
good.
instructor gets to know his student, love his student, um, uh, uh,
Encourage them.
put up with the students' bad habits and try to help them learn to train out of them. Try to help them with mental attitude so they have a positive mental attitude. And not by clapping after they do 5 punches and telling everybody they look great, by correcting them and saying, "Man, when you throw that punch, you're flaring your elbow. You got to get that elbow down." And you don't, the word no is not a negative word. It's a word to describe you're doing something incorrectly. So let's fix it. So a great instructor loves his students, gets to know his students, and tries to bring the best out of his students. Some people just are in there teaching. You got schools where you train until orange belt with some first degree black belt that's just teaching you the movements, and then you can pay extra to train with the head instructor. Well, you pay extra to train with the head instructor, and now he's one of those guys that just teaches you kicks and punches. He doesn't try to explain things to you. He doesn't try to get to know you better. He doesn't have a personal relationship. So I think a good instructor, a great instructor, has a personal relationship. He gets to know his students. He appreciates his students, and he loves his students. He should. God's given him the easiest job in the world, teaching martial arts. But I will say, those parents, they can throw a monkey in the wrench.
Oh yeah.
You and I both know that. So that's what I think. You got to love them, respect your student, get to know them, and always positive with them. Always, even when you correct their technique, positive with them. Even
Yes,
when
sir.
you correct how they used the wrong strategy when they did that fight. That's why you got beat so bad. You just, you don't holler at them about it. You explain it to them. Yeah, I think long answer, but that's my answer.
All right.
you know, and I always saw that in Ray Gomez. I saw that in you when I went over to your school. So
Right.
I've been in schools where I don't see that, you
Right.
know, and
Yeah,
I keep my mouth
most
shut.
schools do. Most schools do have that type of helping, caring, encouraging way of teaching. And then there's some good martial arts schools, and there's some great martial arts schools, and there's some horrible martial arts schools. But
That's
I would
right.
say most of them are good, and you got to find the right person that fits your life. In other words, to help your child, or to help you. Yeah.
Yeah, the parent sees that.
Yes,
When the
sir.
parent sees that in an instructor, they stay there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you've had some students. Um, I'm terrible with names, but you've had some students that started when they were between 6 and 10, and stayed with you all the way up into wasn't stayed with you all the way up into their 20s,
Yeah.
until they went away to college or something, or until they got married and moved away.
Right.
And that shows that you're one of those instructors that gets to know them, loves them, and they know that you want the best for them. You're not just a dollar bill. You know,
Right.
students are not just a dollar bill. That is a parent trusting you to help them make your child a better person, not just in strength, not just for if somebody punches them in the nose someday, but give them strength to beat life.
Yeah. Build their
Um,
character.
yeah, I'll give you an example. Gosh, in the 90s, late 90s, I get a phone call from Gigi Martinez, who's now Gigi Martinez Carbo, and she's a doctor. And she called me up, and she wasn't married yet. And she says, "Is this Covert Blackledge?" I said, "Yeah, who's this?" And she goes, "Gigi Martinez." I said, "Gigi, how you doing?" She says, "Well, I just finished everything, and I'm a doctor of such and such." And I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah. So I'm basically, as you would call me, I'm a primary doctor." And I said, "Really?" I said, "That's wonderful." She goes, "Well, I owe it to you." And I said, "How is that?" "I just taught you karate and worked you out real hard." She goes,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but you taught me that doing those workouts are way harder than reading a book.
Yeah.
And reading a book, if you think that's hard, go do your karate class." So when I was always reading books and I'd start to get, exasperated, I'd just say, "Wait a second. I don't want to do one of those 1,000 kick workouts with Mr. Blackledge." She said, "You taught me that hard work gets you somewhere." And I was like, "Well, thank you." I was really touched. Um, and her children are black belts. She's had them in martial arts. Her husband that she married was not a black belt, and he is now. So, you pass something on to people.
Oh yeah.
And that I did not pass that on to her just because of the hard work, but because I love my students.
Right.
It's like I told them at the reunion, "You kids, you people that are like 14 and under, you were my children. You might have had a mom and dad, but you had another dad,
Yeah.
Mr. Blackledge."
I see
And
what you're saying.
that's just
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just what it is.
Yes, sir.
Now, what was that? I'm coughing.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll look forward to next week getting together and finishing up. I don't know if we could ever finish up, but we'll touch some other.
Oh, I know it. I know it. Really, I'd like to talk to you because I always thought you were one of Havanis's black belts.
One of the
But then
what?
I thought I heard you were. I thought you made black belt with Havanis and was his student. And then somebody said, "No, he's Jim's Choate student."
Yes.
And I was like, "Okay, so if anything, maybe next time you got to tell me a little bit about you starting in your list of instructors up to black belt."
Okay.
Because I'm confused. Who did you real quick? Who did you trade with and make black belt under first?
Jim Choate.
Really? Okay.
September September 1979.
Oh wow, that was right when I got out of the Marines.
Yeah.
There you go. So I might have seen you fighting full contact as a brown belt.
No, I
Huh.
got my
Okay.
black belt. I got my black belt, and then I had my black belt in September. In October, I fought my first kickboxing match, Chico Goldman, at the Anatole
Well, then
Hotel.
I might have seen that because I didn't
Yeah.
know Chico. And the only reason I knew you was Steve Powell. I said, "Who is that?" And he rattled off some names, and he rattled off your name. And I said, "Man, that's a bad little dude." And he goes, "Yeah, he was always winning as an underbelt, and now he just made black belt, and I think he's also just turned 18 or something." And Steve told me a little bit about you, but he didn't even tell me who you trained with. All right. Well, I look forward to next week for sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And yeah, make some notes if you like. I still got some notes I still want to finish up with you. So we'll go from there.
All
God
right,
bless
Troy.
you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. God bless you. Have a great weekend.
Okay, you too. God bless. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching, Destroyers. I'll see you next week.